The Giro d'Italia is starting very soon, so I wanted to make a video to preview the race, but I'm going to try and keep it fairly succinct, trying to keep things just to the highlights, the very important things that you need to know, including the favourites, the key stages, and also riders who will be likely getting into breakaways, winning stages and stuff like that.
And gentlemen, start your engine!
Of course, if you want more of an in-depth preview, you'll just have to wait for Lantern Rouge's one to come out because they are better at that. And quite honestly, I can't be bothered recording like an hour-long episode. However much fun it would be, I don't want to hear myself talking for an hour. So,
ain't nobody got time for that.
The Giro d'Italia, of course, I'm wearing my pink jumper today. And it's starting off with a TT. There are 3 TTs in this race, and I think it accumulates to around 70 kilometres of time trialling, although the last one is very hilly, but we'll get onto that. It starts off with a 20 kilometre one, relatively flat with a small kicker to the line. The favourites for this are going to be Remco Evenepoel, Stefan Kung and Filippo Ganna, more than likely. You know, there will be other guys in there as well, like Mollema or Geraint Thomas and people like that. I think that this will certainly decide a little bit of GC kind of hierarchy earlier on, and also determine who is going to be available to go into the breakaway in the coming stages, because if you're too close on GC, you might not be allowed in. Or some of the GC teams might be quite happy with people going up the road to perhaps take over the leadership of GC. A bit like what happened last year when Juan P. Lopez took over the leadership of the Jersey, and therefore kind of held that, and it was in responsibility of Trek Segafredo to look after it. So I think that ultimately, it'll probably be like Ganna who probably wins this, just because the first week of the Giro this year isn't massively intense in terms of mountainous terrain, so therefore the GC riders might be peaking their form towards the final sort of 2 weeks or so, which means that you might not see perhaps a flying Evenepoel and Roglic in the first stage or so. They might warm up into the race, which I think provides the opportunity for Ganna and Kung to really do something here. In terms of, there are a couple of sprint stages in the first week. The favourites for the sprint stages, I mean, it's probably going to be Pedersen because he's arguably the fastest sprinter here when it comes to flat sprints, but he's also probably the favourite when it comes to reduced sprints. However, there is also Michael Matthews here who's really good at reduced sprints as well. But other sprinters include Fernando Gaviria, Alberto Dainese, Pascal Ackermann, Bonifacio maybe. The fact that I'm mentioning Bonifacio shows the kind of sprint level that we have in this race. Simone Consonni, Mark Cavendish, Rajovic for Bahrain Victorious, Caden Groves, and that's about it. Ballerini maybe for Soudal Quickstep. So it's not a very deep sprinting field in this race, which I don't blame them for, considering that there aren't that many sprinting opportunities in this race. Really, the first big GC test, well, there's a bit of a GC test maybe on stage 4, but I think they'll probably go to the breakaway. There's a very long but shallow climb on stage 7. There's a bit of a kicker kind of puncher stage on stage 8, which I think will be won by GC contenders, but I don't think there'll be massive time gaps in there, considering that the last climb is 2 kilometres at 10%, so there'll be some gaps, but probably not too many. The main GC action really kicks off on stage 13 on the Clans Montana, which goes up some really big climbs, 2,400 metres, 2,100 metres, and then it ends with 13 kilometres at 7.4%. This is going to be a really tough stage, and I think that the accumulated climbing beforehand could lead to a pretty aggressive opening of time gaps on that final climbs. But it's not the longest climb, it's not the hardest climb in the world, but I think that it's going to be hard enough where after the accumulated fatigue of the rest of stage 13, it will probably lead to quite some big time gaps. You got some breakaway stages on like stage 15, for example, which are relatively medium mountain, but not hard enough for the GC riders to really make a big difference. You also have a GC day on stage 16 on the Monte Bondone, which has a lot of climbing, and the final climb is 20 kilometres at 6.7%, but it opens up with 3 kilometres at 9%, and then it's got sections like 8 kilometres at 7.8%. So it's relatively kind of, there's a flatter part in the middle, so it's a little bit of a stepped climb, but it starts off nice and hard, and I think that'll be a big day for GC as well. You got pure sprint stages in the final week, like stage 17 and stage 21. There might be some GC gaps maybe on stage 18, but it looks more like a breakaway sort of day. But the big GC action should really take place on stages 19 and 20, which finishes on stage 19. It finishes up the Tlecimi di Lavaredo, which is a humongous stage, multiple times over 2,000 meters. You have a Passo Gao, which hopefully won't be like snowed in this time of year, but that's 9.8 kilometers at over 9%. That'll really open up the race and reduce it down. It'll be important for riders getting the breakaway. And then you finish, like I said, up the Tlecimi di Lavaredo, which is like 8 kilometers at 7.1%, but it's going to be the rest of the stage, which is really brutal. And then there is a disgusting TT on stage 20.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that, Private Pile?
Which I think will be giving Primoz Roglic PTSD.
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know and they ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine. And you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Because the last time, well, let's face it, he doesn't have perhaps the greatest relationship with time trials on stage 20. He'll be probably swapping to road bikes because you have then a 7.1 kilometer at over 12% climb, which starts off with 4.7 kilometers at 15%. So this is going to be brutal and probably provide a really entertaining finale towards the race, considering that stage 21 is going to be a sprint around Rome. In terms of the main contenders for this race, of course, Remco Evenepoel, Primoz Roglic, those are the big names which are being thrown about the place, and rather understandably, considering that they are in such sensational form. Remco has, of course, won Liège-Bastogne-Liège recently. He won the UE Tour, and he also came second in the Volta Catalunya behind Primoz Roglic, which is why Primoz Roglic is also a favourite, because he has beaten Evenepoel this year. Roglic has won Tirreno Adriatico and the Volta Catalunya this year, so looking in sensational form. However, I would like to point out that Primoz Roglic has done very well in stage races in the past, and that does not necessarily correlate to good Grand Tour performances. This has happened lots of times before, and I think that we all just need to calm down a little bit, because he might let us down. He's let me down a couple of times. I'm just not building myself up for it again, alright? I would rather back Evenepoel for the victory, to be honest with you. I think that the bookies also represent this. They have Evenepoel at lower odds, especially when you consider that Primoz Roglic is literally the human ice rink. He crashes so much, which, well, I say so much. He crashes more often than most GC riders, and his conversion rate of actually finishing Grand Tours is not fantastic. You also have to consider that, I know that he crashed in the Vuelta last year, but Remco was beating him fair and square there. And I think that Remco's a better time trialist overall than Roglic.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Especially on the flatter terrain, of which there are 2 time trials which are flatter. So I think that Evenepoel is really the out and out favourite. But in terms of who are the other contenders for the podium here, of course there's Ineos Grenadiers, who bring whoever you think might be their leader. It could be Teo Gegenhardt, it could be Geraint Thomas. It might also be Pavel Sivakov or Timo Lensman. We simply don't know, but I think that Teo and G are really the likely candidates to be the leaders of this team. I personally would be picking Teo Gegenhardt. I think that he's looking revitalised this year, and I think that he's going to be putting in a really good performance so long as he stays upright. G is also a rider relatively notorious for crashing as well, which is especially prevalent in the Giro when you consider that the weather conditions can be sometimes temperamental and rainy, and therefore slippery, and leading to more crashes. So G and Roglic might be a little bit more nervous when it comes to that. There's also Joao Almeida, UAE Team Emirates, again with a team full of GC options, but I think that'll go around Joao. He's also supported by McNulty, Jay Vine, Ulissi, Formolo, Covey. So I don't really know who's supporting Ackerman. He's just kind of there as like a, I'm here guys, good to be here.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
What?
Joao, again, he looks really good this year. He's finished 3rd at Catalunya, 2nd at Tirreno Adriatico, 6th at Volta Algarve. He's just looked a bit of a step up this year in comparison to last year, where, you know, before the Giro he was 3rd at Catalunya, he was 8th at Paris-Nice, he was 5th at UAE. It's just a slight step up this year. He just seems a bit more consistent. His TT seems to have got a little bit better as well, and I think that Joao is the realistic kind of candidate for 3rd place alongside whoever Ineos really decide to back. Bahrain, in a similar scenario, they have Caruso, Boitlago, Jack Hagen-Mader, so it could be any of those guys, to be honest with you. I honestly don't know who's going to be the best one to pick. Caruso's looking pretty good at Romandy right now. Boitlago's looks strong, finished on the podium at Liège. I'd say that those two are most likely the best candidates, but Boitlago's TT isn't that great, so I don't really know who Bahrain are going to be going for. Bora have Alexander Vlasov and Leonard Kemner, both of which are good contenders for, well, I was going to say for the podium. I'll say that Vlasov's a more likely person to finish on the podium. I'll say that Kemner, although going for GC, probably not going to be the GC kind of favourite, despite how good he has looked. He did win a stage at Tour of the Alps, and his TT is very strong. But I do think that Vlasov provides probably the better option for them. He just hasn't looked that great this year, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be bad at the Giro. You know, lots of riders do bad in stage races, or don't look as good in stage races, but then manage to pull it out of the bag in Grand Tours. That's just the way things are. So I still think that Vlasov's got a pretty good chance. Other outsiders include maybe Iran for EF, Fortunato for Aolo, but he'll lose a gazillion years in the TT.
7 years per hour here. Let's make it count.
There's also Pino possibly for Groupama FDJ. He's looked a bit better this year. Pozzovivo for Israel. Again, he'll lose a lot of time in the TTs. Aino Rubio for Movistar, there's Leknesund for DSM, there's also UAE, they could also go for Vine. You know, Vine or McNulty could be a good option. Give us Ciccone and Mollema for Trek. So there's lots of other outside riders, but I think that realistically, the podium will probably be something like Evenepoel, Roglic, and then somebody else. That's what everybody seems to be thinking.
That's where you're wrong, kiddo.
I'll give you the podium that I think at the end, a realistic podium, and then I'll give you a bit of a crazy one as well. In terms of guys who should be good, doing quite well in the breakaways, I'm looking at guys like from AG2R, Felix Gall and Aurélien Palipentla. Not very good time trialists, so their chances of doing that good in GC are pretty low because of that, but they are fantastic climbers. They both look really good this year, and I think that those two could be really dangerous inside the breakaways. I'd be quite surprised if AG2R didn't win a stage with either one of those two in this year's edition. There's Astana with Samuele Battistella, who's good at the Vuelta last year. There's also Velasco, who's looked good in the Ardennes. Victor Lafay of Cofidis. Ben Healy, in fantastic form so far this year. He could be a really dangerous one, but he's good at time trialing, so is he going to be allowed to go in there? Is he actually too much of a GC threat now? Possibly. Groupama, they have Rudy Millard. In Israel have Mathieu Riccatello, Simon Clark. Those are some really good choices as well. Intermarché, I think, will just be launching into the break all the time with Lorenzo Roto, Boone Hellerhotz, Simone Petilli, maybe Ryan Talame if he goes to this race. I think that Warren Barguil could be a really good one to go into the breakaway. Will Barter, Carlos Verona, Serrano, Team DSM. You know, Leknesund will be a good one for a break. Maybe Harm van Ucker as well. Eddie Dunbar for Jaco Alula. He would be a good one for especially the more climbing breakaways. Callum Scotson's been climbing well this year. A bit more of a rouleur option. I think Ciccone should be going for stages. I hope he doesn't go for GC, because that would be a real shame. Because he's not good at time trialing, let's face it, and he will lose too much time there. So therefore, he may as well go for stages. Him and Mollema, what a great combination for Trek to have going into those. And then UAE, whether they'll allow riders to go into the breakaway. If they do, I do think that Formulo, Covey, Jay Vine, McNulty, all good choices. Of course, Covey won a stage last year as well. And also watch out for Tivani for Team Corotec. He's a good sprinter, but also relatively good at climbing. So I think that those are really the main guys I'm looking out for the breakaway stages. In terms of who I think is going to finish on the podium, here's how I think. I think it's going to be Evenepoel who finishes first. I then think it's going to be Joao Almeida coming in second place. And then I'm going to pick Teo Gegenhardt to finish in third place. I think that Roglic will finish in fourth. I think that he will probably, he might have a crash, to be honest with you. And just the way that this Giro's laid out, it's very back heavy. You have to do well in the final week. And quite frankly, Roglic has a tendency to not do that great in the final week of Grand Tours. It's just the way that it is. It's just statistics. It's not an opinion. It's the way it is.
You can't handle the truth.
So I'm apprehensive to back Roglic, to be honest with you. That's my realistic podium. If I had to choose some random podium, I would probably say something like Boitlago will come in third, Leonard Kemner will come in second place, and then the winner will be Thibaut Pinot or something like that.
What the hell is even that?
That would be my crazy one. In terms of the sprint classification, Mino jersey, I think that Pedersen's pretty much got it tied up. The biggest threat would be like Gaviria, probably is another fast sprinter on the flat. Cav, maybe, if he kind of revitalizes a little bit, finds that good form from a couple of years ago, he could be a good contender there as well. Maybe Caden Groves as well. He's a very versatile sprinter too. So those are my favourites really for the Ciclamino jersey. The climbing jersey, it's very much tailored towards riders who will get into the breakaway rather than the GC riders, which I really like. I think that it's better when it goes towards guys who go in the break rather than it's just people who win the mountaintop finishes. I think that Barguil will win it, personally. I think that he doesn't have the TT, so he'll basically have to go into the breakaway, and Arkea will probably like to have the climbing jersey. He's of course won them in the past in the Tour de France, so I think that it's very possible that he could do that again here, but I think he will face competition from maybe Ciccone, could be a decent one who might contest it. Maybe somebody from Movistar like Carlos Verona might decide to go for it as well. Maybe Intermarché with Ryan Talame might decide that they like that choice as well. Bahrain might go in there with a Boy Targo as well. And AG2R, maybe Felix Gal and Paolo Penta, like I was saying earlier, they might be good ones to try and pick up that classification as well. And then the white jersey will probably go to Remco because he's classified in that as well. So those are all the jerseys. Team GC will probably go to Bahrain, Ineos or UAE Team Emirates. I don't really know which one yet. But that's my kind of preview. That's my lack of waffle sort of preview of the Giro d'Italia. I hope you liked it. I hope you're looking forward to the race. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there. And I'll see you in the next video. Salut. Or ciao.